UFC Undisputed 2009 was a fantastic game. Not because of the things that it didn't do well, but because of the things it didn't do wrong. It would have been so easy to make an Ultimate Fighting game feel like a standard punch and kick spectacle, but instead Ukes and THQ made a game that was incredibly enjoyable and mixed up the combat just enough to make it enjoyable. So I think it was better than the UFC game that came out on the Dreamcast about 10 years ago. Up in the same realm. Was it as good as Pride FC? Absolutely. For that, it was a classic. Just because it set the table for what can eventually be a new genre of sports games. There's not that many out there. I mean, UFC is the fastest growing sport in the world, and it needs a quality and a competent video game out there to kind of augment the whole experience. So with that being said, the new game, UFC 2010 Undisputed, with Brock Lesnar on the cover, the demo has been released on the Xbox Live Marketplace for a couple of weeks now, and with the release date being May 25th, I figured I'd take the opportunity to play through one of the tournaments. So I did. Played through with Lyoto Machida, the Dragon, and overall, the game feels very, very similar to last year's. The striking and the grappling is competent, it's comfortable, it feels right. However, there's not really, again, too much of a difference between last year's version and this year's version. The graphics are much better than last year's. Let's not say much better, they're a step above last year's, because last year's graphics were solid. But the whole TV experience, the whole experience of watching UFC on Spike and watching it on pay-per-view is completely there. From the presentation to seeing the ring girls walking around, who are absolutely beautiful, to the ring announcing, to everything, it feels like you're watching it on television. So with that being said, the in-game action is also, much like last year's, responsive, quick. The matches can be very fast if you make a mistake. They can be very slow if you're being cautious and you're picking your spots. And overall, it's a good, very good Ultimate Fighting simulation. However, it kind of feels like UFC Undisputed 2009 Part B. However, we can see with more fighters and there's supposedly a plethora of new moves added in, this game could be everything that last year's version was and possibly then some. However, as of right now, it doesn't feel like too much of an improvement, even though there is obviously more of an improvement here. It's a better game, but it may not be exactly as good as fans want it to be. Unlike professional baseball, basketball, hockey, football, there's no trades in Ultimate Fighting. There's not a lot of things like in other professional sports. Yeah, a roster update is possibly a very, very important thing, and some fighters have retired since last year, but to be honest, if they've retired, it's not that big of a deal because, perfect example, when Chuck Liddell, I'm pretty sure Chuck Liddell is retired, people would still want to play with him in the game. So some people that don't have 2009, when 2010 comes out, if Chuck Liddell isn't in it, they might want to play 2009 because they want to play as their favorite, fighter. So what I'm trying to say here is this version of the game has to be a step above last year's because there's so much that you can do to change the game. And if there aren't enough changes, there's no reason why you'd want to spend an extra $30 for a new game. Yeah, some new moves might help in the updated roster and a bunch of other things, but considering the fact that it's not like professional wrestling and you can't really have tag matches and all these specialty matches, there's not a lot of room for improvement. So THQ has to make sure that they're really on top of their game. As of right now, the game looks very interesting. The graphics, like I said, are a step above. The control is still smooth, so UFC Undisputed 2010 looks like a quality game. Jury remains out how good, though. So stay tuned.